Good morning. What a wonderful day to come out in the sun. Yes, this is wonderful. Good morning to everyone who's joining us on Facebook. It's good to have you too. The Truth and Excuse me. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's mandate in 2007 was to inform all Canadians about what had happened in residential schools. It was to document the truths of survivors, their families, communities, and anyone personally affected by the residential school experience. This was to be achieved by inviting anyone with a story to share it with those who would listen. Those who cared to hear their truths, to honor their stories by listening, were exposed to the horror of the abuse and torture these children faced and how their families were torn apart. None of them ever able to recover the culture and lifestyle to which they were accustomed, all because both church and state refused to see their humanity, refused to hear their stories. At the commission hearing, some stories were snapshots, brief because the teller was too damaged to withstand the pressure of sharing in the public's eye, but they no less were filled with truths. Others recounted the events of their days and nights under the care of those whom it could be said imprisoned them, and they took hours to tell their stories. Over 6 years, 6,500 men and women shared their memories. No one ever put limits on the words and images that poured from their memories, long restrained but now free to be painted with their tears for all to see. Their voices had long been hidden behind stereotypes, myths, and prejudices. Their voices were written off in the conversations that spoke of how this country was shaped. They were portrayed by the stories of the fur traders and later settlers as being dirty, dangerous, drunk, not to be trusted, or deserving of empathy. Of course, these stories made the white folk feel contempt for the Indigenous people who did manage to survive colonialism right down until today. Of course, they were not the only ones needing to tell their stories. Holocaust survivors, men and women who fought in our wars, those who live on the street. Any stories, theirs or ours, are what make us all an equal part of God's created humanity. Through them, we have a chance for others to get to know us as part of God's creation. They are how we pass on our history in God's world. They're how we connect with our families and our ancestors, all God's people. Let us sing. We are gathering to make this ordinary place sacred. It will be a sacred place. This is where we can find peace or energy, where our joys and sorrows are shared, where we share our bodies, minds, and hearts. So let us be present in this moment, to gain all we can, so we may live lives informed by our faith. What a joyful responsibility, our welcoming of the sacred spirit into our lives in this place. So let us stand and sing. Ever faithful, ever living God. You have gathered us into a community of believers in this hour. You have created a welcoming place for us. Let what we say and do here be real for us and honest to you. In our praying, singing, and pondering, may we be prepared for living in the wider world and all the challenges it brings that affect our choices in living in your Son's footsteps. May this be so, beginning as we sing together. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to them everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do unto you. That verse about turning the other cheek. It's one of the most misunderstood verses in all of Scripture. Most of us grew up thinking that it meant that we should take a Christian pacifist stance. But the context is so important here. And I'm going to share it with you. I had to go through this physically, pretending a couple of times, okay? So you have to use your imagination. When someone was struck on the right cheek by a Roman soldier, it meant the soldier had backhanded him. Okay? This was demeaning. Oh, hi. It's nice to have you up here with me. One day you can be up here. Yeah. Anyways, so it meant he backhanded him. Right? So this was demeaning, degrading. And it was what you gave to an inferior or a slave. Okay? Backhanded. So it went like this, right? Okay, got that? Okay, to not break down emotionally and simply turn the other cheek meant that the soldier couldn't slap you again. Right? You got that? On the right cheek, right? Because it was rather hidden away now from him. Right? Got that? Okay? To try and do that, he would have had to use his left hand, and with the palm of his hand. And this was not the way to slap a slave. That was reserved for equals. Why you go around slapping equals, I don't know. But anyway. So, in giving the other cheek, the degraded person asserted his humanity in a brave way, even though it was a humble response, yet also an act of courage against an oppressive system. So, go home and practice that, okay? Practice it. It works out in the end. We are not ever expected to passively watch by as oppressors do their thing, taking away the rights of any of God's people. Okay? So that is not what that means. Jesus told his disciples to buy a sword, Luke 22:36, and to carry a purse when they went on their missionary trips. Along the road, he said that they would surely encounter brigands who would do much more than slap them on the cheek. So they needed to protect themselves. Jesus himself gave an example of how to deal with the aggressor, someone doing wrong to others. He didn't sit by while the money changers charged those in the temple who could least afford it more than they could handle, making a profit on the backs of the poor. And so he chased them out of the temple with a whip. We don't have to stand by passively. We cannot afford to stand by blindly as we are mistreated, abused, as the rights we have gained are taken away, or anyone. We can't sit and watch it happen to others, especially those who don't have the ability to look after themselves, don't have the resources, the voices. And we better be careful, because if we turn the other cheek, we may find ourselves to be the next target. Let's make sure we stand up and speak. Let's sing. Joseph in a Technicolor green coat. It was a Sunday school story, right? It was one of the more blessed ones. And there's I think all of those Old Testament stories are often just Sunday school stories. The only part we ever hear of them is the end part, the moral part. So, you know what, I want us to refresh our memories, because Randy's not here today. This will be our getting to, come up with answers. And so Sue and Ralph, if you know this answer, you just yell it out, okay? And basically, if we have 35 people here, 34 of them are shy, okay, and won't do it, except the one sitting in front of you. Yes, and the one sitting behind you. You're okay, so we're going to cover Joseph's story, and you fill in the blanks, okay? Joseph was the son of
Jacob.
And?
His mother.
His mother. Good one. Good one. Okay. You don't know his mother?
Rachel.
Rachel, right. Yeah, he had how many half-brothers? Nope. How many full brothers did he have?
None. One.
And at least how many half-sisters?
None.
Two.
Why would I ask? There wasn't any. How many?
Two. One.
One. Do you remember what her name was? The Red 10 book? Do you remember the Red 10 book? Who was it? Dinah. Dinah. Yep. Do you remember who his one brother was? His one full brother? Benjamin. Right, yeah. Why did his brothers hate Joseph?
He was the favorite.
Yep, he was the favorite. He was Daddy's favorite. How did they know this? You guys need to go back to Sunday school, what?
She gave the amazing coat of colors.
Right, yes. What happened when the brothers wanted to get rid of him? How did they do it the first time? Yep, put him down a well. Yeah. And, so why did they do that? Why did they do that first? Do you remember why? This might be a little bit, pardon? He had a dream that he was going to rule over them. Remember? I mean, I get rid of my sibling too. Yeah. So they put him down a well. Yeah, and who decided that course of action? Do you remember who led the brothers? Probably not, right? I'll give you that one. It was Reuben. It was Reuben. And so anyways, so Reuben felt a little guilty, and you know what he was going to do? He was going to come back and save him, because he was going to come and pull him out, because he had a special liking, okay? And this was important. You need to remember that. But anyway, while Reuben was away, his brothers, what did his brothers do?
Sold him.
Yep, they took him out and they sold him on the slavery train. You won't know, but just in case, Bev, do you know how many shekels? How many shekels? 20 shekels. And what did they do with Joseph's coat?
They laundered it all over.
Yep. And it was to convince his dad that he had died, right? Yeah. This traveling caravan of Ishmaelite merchants, what did they do to him?
Took them to Egypt.
Yeah. And they
Sold them.
sold him to Potiphar. Great! Hey, there! Ooh! You're enjoying these other two, you know? I don't know, Carol, you're sort of falling down here today. Yeah. And he was the captain of the Pharaoh's guard, right? And so Joseph became the manager of Potiphar's house, and but he ended up in jail. Do you remember why?
Potiphar's wife made a alleged.
Oh, yeah.
He offended her.
He offended her. Oh, because she came on to him. Yes, and he didn't want to be seduced. Yeah, so anyways, he was put in jail. And so how did Joseph gain his release? Dream, right, a dream. Yes, he had a couple of dreams, and so and then the Pharaoh, of course, found out about it, and he had a problem, so he had Joseph come and interpret a dream. And so this sort of is where our story is set today. It sort of sets it for today. The other little thing in there is that Joseph's family were caught in this famine, and they needed grain, and so they arrived in Egypt, and Joseph recognized them, but he didn't let them know that. He accused them of being spies and sends them back home to get Benjamin. Benjamin, of course, has stayed at home because Jacob didn't want to let him go. And they came back, and Joseph entertains them, but he accuses them of stealing. And do you remember what it was? A silver cup. Yeah, in Benjamin's grain pack. So, of course, Judah says that he will stay in Benjamin's place because, he was so loved by his father, and I presume it was that he would go to jail. Anyway, Joseph realizes that his character has changed, and he reveals himself. And Angela, you're going to tell us how the story continues.
What's what I get for being away for a month?
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Today's scripture is Genesis 45, verses 3 to 11 and 15. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified of his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When we had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute.' And he kissed all of his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. May the story, though old, hold lessons for us that we can apply to events that happen in our lives today." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. I'm getting in a tangent about things these days. I think a lot of us are. It's winding us up. So if I offend anybody today, I apologize. Someone pointed out some things about this story that we likely wouldn't have thought of. There are chapters after chapters in Genesis of some narrator telling us Joseph's story. There are very few places where Joseph himself gives meaning to the unfolding events. The brothers live out their story. Judah finally spills the whole story from his vantage point. It's only when we get to this point in the story with our reading today that Joseph lets his brother know who he is, and he tells his part of the story. He could have told, though, a story about being violently abused by his older brothers, about the experience of life in slavery, about dodging Potiphar's wife's advances and being wrongly accused and sent to prison. He could have told about years and years spent in jail. He could have boasted of his own cleverness and how, even though he was a slave, Potiphar trusted him with his whole household. Even though he was in prison, he interpreted dreams for some high-ranking officials. Even though he was a foreign nobody, he interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams and became next in charge over all of Egypt. He could have let loose his anger. He could have boasted of his success as vindication. He could have told his brothers, "I told you so. Remember those dreams I had when you were all bowing down to me? Check it. I told you so." It matters how you tell the story. And Joseph could have truthfully told the story that way. So it's remarkable that once the story is in Joseph's own word, he tells it in this way, how we heard it today. First, he drops his guard. Whereas in the past he swallowed his sobs or excused himself from the room, this time he lets his tears overwhelm him. He orders everyone else out of the room, and rather than hiding behind his learned Egyptian culture and language, he speaks in the tongues that his brothers would have been familiar with. He tells them who he is, and then he asks, is my dad still alive? The vulnerable humility of a grown man still hoping his dad will find out he's done all right and be proud of him. Then Joseph tells his brothers, come close to me. And he throws his arms around Benjamin, his one full blood brother, weeping and kissing him according to custom. And then he does the same with all of his brothers. So the first thing he does is drop his guard. And then he works to bless his family. He offers them land on the outskirts of Egypt. Come live with me and I'll take care of you. Pharaoh hears about it and sends goods and carts to go and collect Jacob in Canaan. He tells his brothers to tell Jacob the good news. But this was almost a sneaky thing to do. Inherent in telling him the good news, they would also need to confess what they had done to him all those years before. The reconciliation couldn't stay between brothers. It would need to restore every generation of the family. So first, Joseph drops his guard and offers his vulnerability. And second, he seeks to make things right, not just with his brothers, but pursues reconciliation. And finally, there's this. He speaks the truth, wrapped up in God's loving intention. He tells his brothers not to be afraid. He doesn't shy away from saying, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. That's the truth part. But then there's this. Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. God sent me ahead of you. Joseph believes that even though the years have been difficult, it all happened for a reason, and they, through their violent actions towards him, initiated it. And wrapped in God's loving intention, all of this happened because God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. All of the pain and the sorrow of the intervening 20 years have been for a reason, toward a purpose. Now, Joseph never says that it was painful and sorrowful, but he's able to put the pain and sorrow in a context. He drops his guard. He works to make it right, and he tells the truth wrapped in God's loving intention. God sent me ahead of you. God's faithfulness to all generations is a story of God sending one generation ahead of another, ahead of another, ahead of another. God sent me ahead of you, and that's how the story is told. With vulnerability, with the desire to make things right, and with the truth wrapped in God's loving intention. So the tagline in this story should be, it matters how you tell the story. Can we, like Joseph, for instance, tell our church story such that the hand of God is seen, not only in clearly miraculous interventions and revelations, but also in the working out of divine purposes through human agency, failed and broken as it is? Can we, like Joseph, tell the church's stories, all of its faults, its failures, its faithfulness, the opportunity and the growth, as being a truth wrapped out in God's loving intention? Can we celebrate all those that God has sent ahead of us, whomever they are? That's our story. This text should have us considering who have led our communities of faith in the past by whatever name they went. Led us well in years of faithfulness, really, but especially in years of turmoil. Who have the leaders been in either one of our denominations, or maybe I would like to say in our 5 denominations maybe, who have stood out, who were unafraid to challenge the status quo because it was finally time to move into the future. Or maybe before it was quite time. But they saw the need, that the need was there. Enough at hand that someone had to step up and bring the concerns to the fore. Who were the people who took up the challenge on gender and on social and gender norms in the church, saying that it was no longer right that women should be said, that they were too emotional to take on leadership roles? who challenged the history of the way the indigenous people were treated as being savage and they should be assimilated by starvation. That's in quotes, by the way, that the church was complicit in. The need to challenge historical faith doctrines and beliefs that no longer stood up to scholarly scrutiny. The hurtful way those in the LGBT community, that's what it was called back in '88, who were not treated as God's loved ones. Who were those leaders in the stories of our churches? Leaders who felt a burning need to speak up in their leadership role, despite the possibility of angering people to the point that they actually did leave the church. We remember those names. Now, because I'm united, I only remember those names in my church, in my denomination. McLeod and Wilson and McKay and Phipps and St. Julie. But in the Catholic Church, I remember John Paul. John the 23rd. He was the one that revolutionized, the Catholic Church. Took us out of the Latin and enlightened the church. These are the stories of our churches in the past that have set us up for the new stories in the future. And it's up to us whether we choose to be part of those future stories, as did Joseph's brothers. Whether we feel that the Spirit is guiding us to take on whatever role we can contribute in a positive way, and what will be worth remembering. I went back over what I have written and discovered something that really bothered me. It was the bit about Joseph not dwelling on what had happened in the past. He believed he could see the hand of God in all that had happened. It was done for a purpose. Going back to those stories at the beginning of the service about the tragic stories of the indigenous people being raised in residential schools, the victims of the Holocaust, or any genocidal activity, the hate-filled murders of queer folk, can those who have been affected by these horrific events truly see the hand of God in what happened? Can they have moved on, or move on without telling their story truthfully, with all the details? Can they see the hand of God in their history? I'm struggling with that idea. I admire people who can move on after a tragedy or an injustice and move into the future with new hopes and dreams. But did they believe that God's hand was part of the past events? Or is the hand of God really seen now in their courage to tell their story, even in the face of those who still don't believe them or are willing to listen, who say, and I'm being rather glib here, oh, just get on with it. Let the past stay in the past. I'm struggling. I can't see the hand of God in anyone who has been abused, unless it's to have the courage to leave. I can't see the hand of God in a Palestinian or Jew who has been wrongly imprisoned. I can't see the hand of God in those who do and will suffer, and there are many because of decisions made south of the border. I can see God's presence and plans for the future in the hands and hearts of those who will speak up on their behalf, who will work for peace anywhere or for anyone, who will demand for changes that protect people's rights, who will share their resources and their time to relieve the burdens of others, who will say what happened in the past will never happen again, and then do things to ensure that. Where have we seen the hand, the presence of God at work? Where and when and how do we see it today? Where do we see it in our own lives? What about the future? What will we see? I'm sorry, but I'm just going to leave you with the question. What do you think? Let's sing. by what we share. Let us gather up what we have brought to share. Okay. In thankfulness, we will live, we will tell your story, we will live your gift through us to give the world. Amen. Just a couple of things happening. One at 2 p.m. This is why they're getting their clothes on. They're all dressed in black. They are ready for the concert. 2 p.m. at St. Paul's and St. John's, right? That's the name of it. Anglican Church down in Haleybury. It'll be on Google Maps somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a fundraiser for
Zach's Crib.
For Zach's Crib.
Free will offering and all the proceeds go to Zach's Crib.
So get there safely, please. Thank you. Have a good time. You can go out this door.
Oh, we're gonna sneak out this door.
Okay, okay.
Sylvia likes playing with the curtains.
I do.
Randy is speaking to Lee this week about the door, putting the door back on, and about the ramp. So the ramp being heaved, right? So we can't get the back door open. If anything can go wrong with that ramp, it's gonna go wrong. Lord's Kitchen dinner, lunch was on Friday at the Catholic Church. Shirley the Cart. Everybody know Shirley the Cart? Okay. Shirley the Cart is in possession of a quilt. Nope, that she quilted for someone over a year ago. The person's never come back for it. Her group has done their best to contact everyone they know, and they haven't found anyone. I'm allowed to tell you this now. She wasn't willing to tell what it was, because actually someone did try and claim it, and it wasn't them. Really, honestly. Anyways, it's what they call a 1-inch quilt. Little 1-inch squares, whole thing. And it's about a queen size. Okay? If you have any clue as to who, I mean, this would have stood out in somebody's sewing room if you were ever in their house. 1-inch quilt, 1-inch little squares, all sewn together. If you have any idea who this might be, give Shirley a call or tell me and I'll call her. She really doesn't want to look after it anymore. She wants to find its rightful owner. A lot of work went into this. And so anyways, but she has a specific way to identify it. So you can't go in and say it's yours, okay? So she has a specific way, yeah. So, so anyways, if you know of somebody, ask any quilter you know, okay? Any quilter you know. Even if you don't really know them, but you know they quilt. Ask them, okay? Bob and Kay have a request. A friend of their daughter has been moved up to the Kirkland Lake Hospital from North Bay while she awaits for a nursing home bed. Now, I don't know if this has happened to anybody in your families, but she's 62, she's quiet, but she can carry on a good conversation on any number of topics. She belongs to the Presbyterian Church in North Bay, And she is lonesome. She's lonesome for her family and her friends and her church family. And they were wondering if there's anyone who can pop in for a visit every once in a while until she finds a home closer to home. Apparently there were 6 people moved up from North Bay, and they were put up in either Kirkland Lake or in Iglar. So there's some people there. So you're a long way from home. And so anyways, her name is Nina Dinell, and I have some pieces of paper here just with her name on it. If you can have the time, just, once a week, every 2 weeks, just to go up and say hi. It's awful. I hope it never happens to any of us. The good news story for this week, I'm finding it harder and harder, right? To go through that news, and boy, but I got it. It was that Four Nations hockey game. Yes, wasn't that good? Yes! Bravo, right. Yes, when that very imaginative young woman changed the words from all of us command to that only us command. Yes, very clear warning. She spoke up to the powers who think that they should lead us. And she said, I truly believe that we must stand up, use our voices, and try to protect ourselves. And she said it was a way to express our outrage in the face of any abuse of power. And we are right to mention that here in this place, because abuse of power is a truly biblical concern. So, is there anything else that's happening in the world that we want to be concerned about?
There's a spaghetti supper on Thursday.
Winter Carnival breakfast
Oh,
Sunday.
I thought the spaghetti supper was last Friday.
No,
It's this Friday.
This Thursday.
This Thursday? Okay, at the Holy Family?
Holy Family's doing spaghetti supper at the arena.
At the arena. Oh, at the arena.
The breakfast is on Sunday at the arena.
The breakfast.
Rotary breakfast for the carnival.
Oh, you guys. The Rotary breakfast at the arena, at what time?
8 till
8 till
noon.
8 till noon, so we can go before or after church? We're good. We're good. Rotary breakfast.
So we won't be here, we'll be over there.
Yeah. Okay. Spaghetti dinner on Thursday. Okay. Who does the spaghetti dinner, who's that for? Is that a fundraiser?
It's a spaghetti dinner for the Holy Family School, I guess.
Okay. Is there a charge for the Rotary breakfast?
$10.
$10? Okay.
Kids under 5 are 5.
Okay. None of us have children that age. Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. Aaron has. Yes. Anything else? Then let us pray. Creator who began the story and made us to be active participants in it. We're grateful for being made your co-workers. It holds great responsibility and often has its challenges. In those times, we especially need your helping hand. And we know that comes through your Spirit, encouraging us to work in community, to use the gifts that you have blessed us with, to share with abundant generosity for the benefit of others. In our personal lives, help us to see where you are present. Stir our imaginations, especially in the difficult times, to be able to identify where you are active. Perhaps it's in friends who are willing to just sit quietly with us as we ache, when we're sad. Or maybe it's when we're commiserating with humor. Because you are a God with humor. Perhaps it will be as we try to find sense in what's happening today in our world and how it will affect us here in Canada, and then how to protect our identity, our freedoms, our health. Even as we do that challenging work, help us to relax. Easier said than done. Take from us the tension that makes peace impossible. Take from us the fears that do not allow us to venture into newness of life. Take from us the worries that blind our sight. Take from us the distress that hides your joy. Help us to know that we are with you in your care, in your love, and in that way we're one. We keep in our prayers those who are struggling in mind and body. They may be known to us, but many more are not. Help us all to remember that the person standing in front of us in the grocery line or behind us in the post office may be suffering in ways we can't know, in which they are very adept at covering up. Let us just take the time to give silent prayers every once during the day, just to cover their needs, their wants, the help that they need. We continue to pray for Duffy and Sue and their family as they hold each other close on this journey that they're taking. We add to our thoughts and prayers Nina and Danelle, alone, far from home, and the others who arrived here who are forced to wait and wait and wait for a place close to family and friends, which will give them peace of mind and body. And we pray this morning for Dot, who took a tumble this morning and is over at the hospital. We hope that the medical folk over there will look after her well. Bless us this week in our discerning of your presence wherever we are, with whomever we meet, and whenever these things come into alignment. Be by our side. Be by our side. So be these things. Amen. I don't know if this hymn fits very well on the verses in that, but it's the chorus is "This is my story," right? This is my story, so we have to sing it. You all know the story behind this hymn. I just love it. Blessed Assurance. You know the story?
We don't know what the hymn is.
Blessed Assurance. Blessed Assurance.
No, it's not up there.
Oh, you want it up there? So Blessed Assurance. Okay, for those of us that don't know the story, it was written by Tommy Dorsey. Not that Tommy Dorsey, another Tommy Dorsey. And he had a wife who was expecting, and he was a pianist, a musician, and he had a gig that he needed to go to, but he didn't want to go because his wife was coming up. It was her due date, coming up soon, and she urged him to go. And so he did. And while he was away, she went into labor, and she died, and the baby died. He went for a while, and there was no way he could touch a piano, make music. His heart wasn't in it. Until finally a friend just took him one day and hauled him up to a rehearsal studio and sat him down at the piano and said, "Listen, this is your God-given gift. Use it." And this is what came out of it. That was his story. That was his story. So, as we sing it, think of your story.
Watching
signed up.
We are full.
You don't want anybody else.
We are at 60. We are full.
And you begin when?
This Thursday at 10:30 sharp.
This Thursday. Okay, for those of you who haven't signed up, you don't care about what she just said. That's it. Okay. So, this blessing was inspired by Psalm 37, which was the psalm for today. Trust in God and do what is good. Live with quiet confidence where God has placed you. Delight in God's presence, and you will have all that your heart's desires. Commit everything you do to God. Trust completely, and you will never be let down. Be patient. Don't worry or get upset when things don't go well. Instead, learn to rest in God's presence. For those who trust in God will have everything they need. Stories are memory aids, instruction manuals, and moral compasses. And there's always room for a story that can transport people to another place. That's probably why book club people enjoy a story. But here's another one. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Yeah. So.